Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author Danielle Girard. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air global network with more than 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Angie Kim. Angie moved as a preteen from Seoul, South Korea, to the suburbs of Baltimore. After graduating from Interlochen Arts Academy, she studied philosophy at Stanford University and attended Harvard Law School. I always have to think you're just such a dummy, Angie, where she was an editor of the Harvard Law Review. Her debut novel, Miracle Creek, won the Edgar Award, the ITW Thriller Award, the Strand Critics Award, and the Pinckley Prize, and was named one of the best books of the year by Time, the Washington Post, Kirkus Reviews, and the Today Show. Angie lives in Northern Virginia with her family. Welcome, Angie.
Thank you so much for having me, Danielle. I'm so excited to be talking to you. I feel
I
like
know.
I wrote this book I wrote this book staring at your face half of the time.
I
So
know. I know that's so true. We had for other people who don't know exactly what that means, we did this alone together during the pandemic where we would get on our computers and write, and then we would take breaks and chat. And so we on our computers in the background, you could see everybody working on their book. And heard, I had heard so much about Happiness Falls and in its early iterations, and as you were going through the process of working with a new editor and all this stuff. And Angie, I had high expectations, of course, because you're brilliant, but this novel just really blew me out of the water. I get a little teary to think about this family and what they're going through and just all the stuff. So, and there's a lot to unpack without any spoilers, but will you just tell our listeners about Happiness Falls?
yes, thank you so much for that love. That makes me so happy, especially coming from another author whose writing I really love and admire. So thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank
that,
you.
Danielle. Happiness Falls is a story about a family in crisis. At the beginning of the story, this biracial Korean American family, their father, Adam, has gone missing. And the only person who might know what happened to him is 14-year-old Eugene, who can't tell the police or the family anything because he's a non speaker. He has a rare genetic condition called Angelman syndrome and a dual diagnosis with autism, and he can't talk. And so the entire family really has to come together to learn to communicate and really connect with one another and to really get to know one another, including the father, in order to figure out what might have happened to him.
Yeah, and tell us about the point of view character because I really love this. It's getting into Mia's head, and she's a young woman in college, and tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Thank you so much. So, the 14-year-old witness non speaker Eugene, his two older siblings are Mia and John, who are both 20 and they're fraternal twins and they're home from college, reluctantly
Yes.
because it takes place in the beginning of the pandemic. It is not at all a pandemic novel, but it just know that it is set during that time. Mia is, I love her so much.
Me too.
She is, oh, I'm so happy.
So much.
She's a very voicey voice. She
Hmm.
is opinionated. She is funny. She is, I don't know that she means to be funny, but she is. She has a
Yes.
very dry wit. She is hyper analytical. She's an overthinker.
Oh my
She
God. Yeah.
knows that she can be really annoying to people sometimes. She's so smart and she's curious about the world and she's so curious about everything, including, music and algorithms and science and genetics and the way that our brains work and Vulcan mind melds and so
Yeah.
many things. And I love her and the because of the missing person, mystery. This is, of course, a mystery, and there is a mystery that hopefully sucks readers right in and keeps you wanting to turn the pages. But I describe the mystery element as almost a Trojan horse, because I hope that once you're kind of sucked in and you want to keep reading to figure out what happened to the father, that you'll just sort of let Mia kind of talk to you about all the things that are on her mind, which of course
Yes.
includes the family, but so many other things.
She is. I actually think she's a little, there's a little of me in her and a little of you in her, because she is such a thinker, and everything that happens, she just spins and spins. And one of the devices we talked about is were the footnotes, right? I mean, as you were writing this, there are these, and I love the way you describe it right from the beginning. You're like, basically Mia comes out and tells you, I think a lot about a lot of things, and sometimes I think I segue off topic into something else, and so I'll put these in in footnotes so you can dig in. And of course, I did not miss a single footnote, but she also gives you the option that if you just want to get onto the story, you can skip my footnotes. But I love the relationship between her, the sort of twins who are different sex twins, right? And the dynamic of that, and the dynamic of being an adult coming home, like you said, reluctantly, because of what's going on in the world. And besides that fact, yeah, there's nothing in this book that made it feel like the pandemic. And I actually forgot. I didn't think about the pandemic at all, which, maybe we're going to dig into that more. And I mean, authors will dig into that more as we get further away. But for now, I'm good with not thinking too much about that. Still, it's still, damage to that. So talk about Eugene, because I think a lot of this book really does focus on this 14-year-old who, up until now, really has not had any way to communicate with anyone. And when we start to learn about him, we can appreciate how incredibly awful and sad and lonely that existence would be.
Yeah, I love Eugene so much. So he is 14. He has not he can't speak, like I said, and I have a little bit of a personal insight into what that would be like. I mean, in a way it's a really horrible comparison. I feel guilty even making it, because what I went through is so tiny and limited compared to what these non-speakers go through. But I think I
But it
became
it opened your compassion to them. So I
exactly,
appreciate
yeah.
what you're saying, and I know you're not making a direct comparison, but I do want you to tell the story, because I think this is really powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I have an author's note about this in the back, but so I came I'm a Korean immigrant. I came from Seoul to South Korea to the US when I was 11 in middle school, and I couldn't speak any English. And so I went sort of overnight from feeling like a smart girl with, good grasp on the language. I was very, gregarious and lots of friends, to all of a sudden not being able to talk at all. And there is such a huge fundamental assumption in our society, not just American, like the entire world over, and so it was in me as well, that equates oral fluency, verbal fluency, with intelligence. So if you can't speak for whatever reason that has nothing to do with your cognitive functioning, you feel stupid and you feel ashamed and embarrassed. And I certainly felt that way in middle school, which is a horrible time to be feeling this way to begin with. And then when I got to the point where I could understand English, um, but I still couldn't speak it very well. I got to see that people were indeed making fun of me, because when people see that you don't speak the language, they just assume that you can't understand. So they talk about you in front of you, which is a particularly humiliating experience.
Yes.
Oh, and so that just kind of opened, my sort of it made me kind of obsessed with this idea of, why do we as a society equate oral fluency with intelligence? We know for a fact that there are tons of people who for whatever reason can't speak, or they stutter, or they
Right.
don't speak the language, or they have accents or whatever. And we just assume that that must mean that they're stupid. And so so then fast forward to when I'm a mom and I have good friends with children who are non-speakers, who are diagnosed with the so-called nonverbal autism. And everyone thought, including their parents, including their teachers, their doctors, everybody thought that they just didn't have any words inside of them, thus the label nonverbal, right? No words. And thought that they couldn't understand and certainly couldn't write or read or anything like that. And then come to find out that some of these children, um, who are kids that I myself know,
Yeah.
start working with therapists on um, a spelling therapy where they like take large boards with few letters on them and then learn to sort of control their motor skills in order to be able to point to letters one by one in a very painstaking process and thereby learn to communicate. And
Right.
it is just, it was unbelievable. And when they started doing this, which is a really, really hard thing for them to do because they have motor issues, which is one of the reasons why they can't talk, because oral motor
Right.
is like the
Right.
finest of fine motors. It's the hardest.
Right.
And so when they started communicating in this way, we found that they were coming out with these beautiful messages, and it turned out they could read all along. They had these complicated thoughts. They were picking up lessons from the side, and they were kind of like locked in.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just floored me. And so I started writing this book. I did a lot of research. I met a lot of these non speakers. I, in fact, actually teach creative writing to a bunch of non speakers.
Good for you.
Yeah, some virtual and some in person. In fact, Happiness Falls, it was named Good Morning America's book club pick last week. And
Congratulations.
thank you. And so that was on Tuesday, pub day. And then on Wednesday, Juju Chang and the entire GMA crew came down to the Northern Virginia area, and we did a taping all day at the school, at the therapy center. And Juju Chang, like, you're gonna see this, I think it's airing September 22nd. And she, like, it was she was like conversing with these students of mine. And so, they would point to letter by letter, and she was serving as scribe. So she wrote down the messages one by one, read them out loud, and then said what her comment was back. It was just the most incredible thing. She was like near tears.
Yeah.
And it was unbelievable. It was I
Yeah.
feel like the camera guys were in tears too. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah.
It's so powerful. I mean, it's even like we do this to all sorts of groups, like even people who are sort of more introverted, we discount because voices, and you think about our politics and our everything is about who's kind of the loudest, the biggest. I mean, and of course, like anybody who can't stand up and just shout at the top of their lungs what they want, need, whatever, gets discounted. So it's a really powerful story.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm trying to remember because, of course, like I said, I mean, we were working sort of, and we've had retreats together and worked when you were working on this book. And I can't remember, was it always Mia from the beginning?
Yes.
How did you
Mhm.
find her? Like, do you remember sort of how she
Oh, totally. So
arrived?
Mia's voice has been with me for 13 years, I guess. So I started writing in my 40s, and in 2010, maybe 2011, I started writing a short story and about this family. And they were a little bit younger, so Mia and John were teenagers, and they were kind of really resentful of their non-speaking little brother who was taking up all of the attention and all of the money in the family. And but they also felt really, really guilty because the backstory on this family is that the twins kind of did something, a prank, when the mom was pregnant with Eugene, and they feel guilty. They feel like they caused his voice to kind of leak out of his body. So this short story was about them when they were living in Korea, and they're the twins are literally going around this Korean graveyard looking for his voice, like,
Oh,
doing lots of
yeah.
experiments to try to find it. Anyway, that story was written in Mia's voice, and I just loved
Yeah.
voice. It's a voice that sticks with you. I'm not sure where it came from, but it was funny to me, and it had an attitude. I'm sure it's a lot of it is me probably, and and a lot of it is my sort of more sassy kids when they were that age. And so all of those things combined together, and this family and this voice has been with me ever since. It was published in 2013, so like 10 years ago.
Right.
And I couldn't let this family go. I would sort of think about them, like when I would hear about therapies for non-speakers, I would be like, oh, I wonder if they're trying that for Eugene. I wonder what's going on. And then I
Hmm.
would be wondering, like, oh, I wonder if they heard about this thing happening in the DC area, because I knew that
Right.
they come back to moved back to the DC area. And so I would just be thinking about them. And when my kids were going through college admissions and all of that sort
Hmm.
of stuff, I would sort of think, like, I wonder how Mia and John are doing, even though, like, I know
Right.
that they're
Right.
they're they're not real people, but still it kind of
They,
like, they were like hooked into my brain.
yeah,
I
they
wonder.
stick with you. And I do think there's I mean, and it comes up, of course, with Mia, although the kids are incredible with Eugene, but of course there is that sense, that sort of the shame of feeling like, what would life be like without Eugene, right? How much easier would it be? And also, of course, how much we love Eugene. And then, as the book goes on, there's other sources of, discovery and shame. And it gets, it's complicated. As this is for any parent, any family who's dealing with somebody who has a disability, right?
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
that it really what it requires, and then to have the dad go missing, just puts so much pressure, especially since he was the stay-at-home parent at that time. So it puts so much pressure um, on the situation. So it's beautifully done. So let's talk about the happiness quotient a little bit. So basically, and I'll let you explain it. There's this, the kids don't know much about this. It's something that the dad Adam was working on. But can you explain it a little to us? Because it just
Yeah.
also speaks to your brain and also to this family. I really love that. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that happens is that they find a notebook of the dad, and they find it in sort of a mysterious circumstance. So I won't spoil that for, but they do find it, and it has all this stuff about happiness theories that the dad was working on that the family didn't know about. And um it's interesting because the dad had this theory about the relativity of happiness, and how happiness is doesn't just derive from what you experience, but it's kind of your experience compared to your expectations, and
mhm.
also your baseline, so like what you consider to be your baseline. So this kind of explains why, for example, those happiness studies that say that a silver medalist is often um, much more unhappy, much sadder, and more depressed than the bronze medalist, because the bronze medalist is happy that they just like
On the podium.
medal,
Yeah.
and got on the
Yeah.
podium. Whereas the silver medalist is like, oh, if only I had done this or that, maybe I would have gotten the gold, that type of thing. And the
Right.
fourth place finisher is always like, really, really upset. And so there are all these types of studies that seem kind of confusing at first, like lottery, people who win the lottery, like a year after the lottery, they're no happier as a group than people who a year before were in horrible accidents and became paraplegics. And you're like, how can that possibly be? And so the dad is trying to make sense of it, trying to quantify things, and trying to see if his insights into lowering expectations and lowering the way you think of the baseline of your life, if that can actually make you happier. And so he does all these experiments, and he's been doing them on the children and the family without them knowing about it. So of course, one of the questions is this disappearance, like, is the whole thing an experiment? Yeah.
Right. Of course. Yes. And it's interesting. So what brought you to that question? Because I think that was a big it was the nonverbal thing and the happiness thing that sort of came together initially to create this book.
Yes, and I think I showed you this Venn diagram that I had that had three circles.
I
And
remember
the
that.
top circle, I'm looking at it right now. The top circle is Adam, the father, going missing. So it's the missing person mystery. And then there's another intersecting circle that is this voice fluency. And then another circle that is this happiness quotient idea. And where they all overlap in the middle is, sort of hopefully the ending of the book and the heart of the book.
Right.
And so the relativity of happiness thing is something that I've just been obsessed with like my entire life. I think it comes from the fact that, again, when I was an immigrant, and how our lives in Korea it was just, we were so poor that we were told that we were going to be so happy coming to the US. Like, I remember my friends, when we found out that we were immigrating to the US, being like, oh, it's like you won the lottery. Because, like, we didn't have TVs, we didn't have running water,
Yeah.
so it was a hard life from that perspective. But I also remember being so happy because I was just in my place. I loved my community. I loved my neighborhood. And and I had my family and my parents. And then we came to the US. And even though I got, like, my own bathroom for the first time, I had never seen a shower. Microwave, refrigerators, all the color TVs, all these things that I had never had before, my own bed, my own bedroom, all these things that I gained, that should have made me happier. And I was told that it would make me happier. And yet I was miserable,
Yeah.
like not speaking English. My parents had to work in this dangerous neighborhood. My dad was shot. He was fine, but he, like all these things that just caused so much stress. And so I think I've been thinking about sort of objective versus subjective notions of happiness for a long time. And I studied philosophy in college, so of course, and psychology too. So it's just the intersection of all these things just made me so fascinated. And I remember hearing about this lottery winner study, and that being like, oh, that rings a bell, because I had heard that, it's like you won the lottery, and how that did not make me happy. So it just made me think about, how is there something that we can do? And I wanted to work it out for myself. And I think I tend to write when I don't know the answer to something, when I want to try to figure it out. And so I thought, all right, well, I'll give this problem to one of my characters, and that way I can sort of figure this out for myself, and and it can be sort of an interesting through line for this family too.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And I think it's a really good, and I think we all know this to be true, that I think there is this sort of, we're always better off with lower expectations of everything, right? Like if we lower our expectations, then we can be pleasantly surprised, or we can just get what we expect, right? It's versus being disappointed by things and having it really rock us when, it's just life, right? It's just the way things happen. So
It is, but you also have to be really kind of careful because, as the dad points out, he was like, yeah, if I try to lower expectations so much, then that can actually be a bummer in and of itself. Like
sure.
trying to lower your expectations for tomorrow and telling yourself and your family, like, wow, tomorrow's going to suck. This trip's going to suck. Like,
Right.
that's going to kind of be a bummer today,
Yeah.
So it's going to ruin your today. So that's why the dad like sort of thinks about all this and decides, you know what, I think the key is to keep your expectations high, to be excited, to be hopeful, but then at the same time just remember that you're the baseline of your life, to keep that low, the way that you think about sort of what life should be as low as possible so that you can enjoy the things that you have and and not take it for granted, sort of. So with this book coming out, like not sort of going like, oh well, my baseline is like I have this book that won awards and things like that. No, but to be like, no, my baseline is back when I didn't have an agent, I didn't have an editor,
Mm-mm.
I hadn't sold a book, I didn't know how my books were going to be received by people, I didn't have like, I just didn't know,
Yes.
I didn't have those reviews. And so I can still hope, and I can still like have expectations that people will hopefully love this book, and kind of like enjoy those fantasies and dreams and things like that that I might have, but at the same time remind myself constantly like that is not where I started, and where
Right.
I sort of my baseline is the person who was like crying to you 3 years ago, going like, I don't know if I can finish this book. I have no idea what happened to this father. I don't know. I don't
I
know.
know. But that's actually good for people to hear too, because I do think like you've had incredible and are having incredible success. But really, really, I mean, Angie, the reason you're having it, besides being really bright, obviously, is that you are in that little closet, and Angie's in a closet right now. You don't know that, but I know that she's in a closet.
Yes.
That's her writing space in this place that normally doesn't have Wi-Fi or anything. And she's in there like, 18 hours a day, for stretches of time. And you really you show that it really is a lot of hard work, to create a book that is so powerful and nuanced, and you worked at it like you said, 3 years, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Was it only 3 years? It feels like it's so much longer than three
Well,
years.
when did Miracle Creek come out?
It was
2019.
2019. 2019.
Yeah, so it's 4 years between books,
Yeah.
and so you were obviously starting this book when that was coming out. So yeah, it's a huge commitment, and also it sort of like reminds us that the idea of writing a book in a year is kind of preposterous. I know we're supposed to do that, or at least some of us are supposed to do that, but you were like, no way, that's not happening. The book I'm gonna write is gonna take me longer than that, and I think it's worth the wait. I was absolutely floored. And I just absolutely love Mia. I always tag things. Um, and I want you to explain this word Jung. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah. Jung. Yeah. Yeah.
Jung. Because I
Yeah.
think it's actually kind of a beautiful concept that you said well, Mia explains to me that we don't
Yeah.
have it in English. Can you
Yeah.
explain it, Jess?
Yeah, it's a Korean word, and it sort of describes this um solidarity and connection that people have. And it's people use it to talk about family connection, how it's just there even if you may not want it. Sometimes it's just, it binds you. And Koreans use it a lot to talk about the Korean national solidarity, especially like during the war and the Japanese occupation, and all of those things, just to sort of say we are a people and we're bound together in this like kind of almost mystical way.
Yeah.
And so it is talking about that, and Mia talks about it with respect to her siblings, that
Mm.
no matter what, it is there. It's there as a foundational thing,
Yeah.
and this connection that they have. And she and John, the twin, even if they used to be really close, they're no longer, they're kind of in that high school, college, kind of annoyed with each other kind of thing.
Yeah.
But even so, they, I mean, you see everything that happens and then they just come together. They just have to. And then their old connections, which, they used to like go around pretending to mind meld with each other like Vulcans when they were little. And they kind of do a similar thing because that's what you revert back to the things that comfort you.
Yeah, especially in times of crisis.
Yes,
Exactly. Well, it's a
absolutely.
beautiful. I feel like it's really lovely. I mean, the mom, her sort of struggles, and I mean, it's everybody has their, and Eugene, we get to understand, in the book as well. And I think that's a big that, and Adam, like you said, even though he's gone, and we never actually meet him on the page because he's already gone when the book starts, we get the sense, we get to know who he is and who these people are, and their family unit is pretty amazing, right? I mean, if you think about what what they have survived, what they're surviving together, it's a beautiful story. And Angie, if you haven't read Miracle Creek, is also just a beautiful writer. And I'm working on a rewrite right now for my surrogate book, Angie, which you know about. And I was like, I'm so intimidated now to sit at the screen after reading Angie's book. I'm like,
Oh,
I need Angie to sit here for a few minutes and like think for
oh,
me. So but I mean, in the best way, like obviously.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, thank
but
you.
I really was, it is, I've read a lot of books, and this is definitely a top book for me for 2023. It's just amazing, Angie.
Oh, thank
So,
you so much, Danielle.
and
That means a lot.
well, you earned it, girl. And I hate to do this because I feel like it's so unfair, but what are you working on?
I'm not working on anything right now. I was working
Yeah.
on something, and I still am. It's going in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
But you and I have talked about this, how much I loved linked stories. And I think this next one that I'm thinking of is a kind of a linked story of sorts.
Hmm.
It's really, really high premise, so I'm not gonna, or what is that called? High premise? Wait, no. What is
Um, no, I know what you're saying. Like a big,
like a big idea? Yeah, like the idea
yeah. What is
is
that called? High concept.
a concept, high concept. Exactly. Thank you.
Here we are, the
Perfect.
writers with no
Yeah,
words.
I know. It's what's wrong with us. Yeah.
Well, you have an
Yeah, but
excuse,
yeah.
but yeah,
So it's yeah, so it is a high concept. So I'm not really describing it.
sure.
I haven't even like told my I don't even know who there is to tell, but I'm not telling anyone about it
Fair, fair.
because it's one of these things that with this book, with Happiness Falls, I told everybody about it. And I
Yeah,
felt like when I came back later, people were like, wait, I thought it was going to be this. I thought it was
right.
called that. And I was like, you know what? Next book, I'm going to try just writing without telling people and see where that goes. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
because
they do say like, right, there's like a mixed message about it. I think sometimes you have to talk about it, or at least I have to talk about it. But there is also that idea that if you talk about it too much, you sort of spread the magic, and you need to keep the magic close to kind of drive the story. So it is um it is tricky. I mean, and when we went to that, when we were in Ocean City together,
yeah,
it was like this idea that sort of we could, this mutual magic. And it's kind of a lovely thing, those writers retreats where you're working like really alone but together. It's
I love that.
I know.
That was one of my favorite things. I
I
feel like I
know.
need to do that once my tour is over, just to like jumpstart, doing something, really working on this next book. I'm actually really kind of intensely missing writing as much as I
Yeah.
complain about how much I hate writing and all that kind of stuff, and we always say like, oh, I hate like writing, but I love having written.
Yeah.
And and there is something to that, but there is just something so wonderful just about working out a story and that magical moment when you finish a scene and you're happy with it and you reread it the next day, like over coffee or maybe at night over a martini or a glass of wine, and you just read it, and yeah, you're making like little edits here and there, whatever, but like just that pride of like, wow, I did this today,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and so I'm really, really missing that. And I'm
Yeah.
missing just reading for pleasure. And so
Yeah.
I really can't wait to sort of get back to that. As much as I'm loving this whole, like talking to people about Happiness Falls and just kind of
Yeah.
reveling for a little bit, just being done, and not having any pressure for right now, but still
Yeah.
really, really, really want to get back.
Well, I mean, we are writers, right? So when we don't write for a little bit, it feels like a break. And when we don't write for a long bit, it feels totally wrong. Is there anything you would say to, women or anybody who is like, starting their first book in their 40s and thinking this is the thing I want to do? Any advice?
So this is something that I tell all of my students, but I don't know how applicable it is to everybody because everybody's different.
Yeah.
But for me, I really love that I started with short stories. And
Hmm.
Danielle, I know that you have an MFA, so obviously you did a lot of short stories in grad school too.
I've never
But
written a short story, Angie.
seriously, is that true? How
Seriously.
have we never
Well,
talked about
that's
this?
not true. I did write one, but I wrote it. Yeah, no, I'm not. I know. I don't know, and I think you're right. It is probably a really smart way. But yeah, I've never done it.
Well, only because I feel like, because you did get an MFA, so you had like those 2 years or whatever when you were like intensely working on writing. But I feel
Yes.
like a lot of people, when they say, like, oh, I have an idea for a novel, I have a book in me or whatever, they don't really know what that entails.
Right.
And I feel like working on a short story, even though I do think that sometimes short stories are harder than longer books
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
just
That's
there's
why I
more
never did
craft
it.
involved, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but still, like just the craft of like figuring out the arc of a story, a character, the
Yeah.
arc of a character, and also the process of like writing something, showing it to other people, workshopping it, and then
Hmm.
rewriting it, and then doing that like 7 times.
Right.
And I mean, that's like intense for a 20-page story. It's
Yeah.
like unmanageable for me, almost for novels that are like 400 pages long. So I just think that it's a good way to just see if it is all you think it is. And
Right.
because you really have to love the process, I think. You have to
Yes.
love editing, you have to love revising, you have to be okay with like having people tell you, I don't understand this, or like,
Yeah.
why did you have this character do this stupid thing, or
Right.
whatever it is, and
Right.
then and then sending it out to literary
Right.
magazines and getting those rejections. I feel like that is so important. And some people are going to try that and be like, this sucks, and I'm not going
Yeah.
to ever do this. And
Yeah.
better to find out with a short story, I think, than like
Yes.
a 300-page book.
It's true. And there's a lot of like, you can learn a lot from the structure of a short story that it's really overwhelming. I mean, one of the things I did, horribly in the beginning, of course, was describe like every single moment of every single day of every single character. And you don't need that, right? It's get in at the last minute, get out at the first opportunity. And I think that is something really, I mean, in hindsight, I wish I'd done it. I don't remember exactly the thought process in not doing it, but I'm a typical overwriter. So I would have, my 20-page short story would have been 65 pages. And so
Oh, it
that was,
is.
yeah,
My short stories absolutely are. And then you
yeah,
have to get it down and down and down and down,
right,
and
right.
it's just that sentence level, taking the joy in the sentence level writing too,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
sentence level and the paragraph level. And you really have to love it. And if you don't, then I don't know. Then I don't know that people can do that.
yeah. Why would you do it if you don't
I
love it?
really, yeah, and I really don't understand how people do this whole like writing a book a year thing that I'm confounded. I'm just
Yeah.
completely, yeah.
Well, they're not writing. I mean, this is a, this is a really, they're not writing this kind of depth, because you can't get to this kind of depth, I don't think. I mean, people are doing it. I mean, people are all different. So I'm not going to say that's not fair to say nobody can do it. But I do think that it's evident from reading this that there's so much in it, so much of your time and yourself and your energy, and so much rewriting. I know you. I know you've torn this thing apart 9 times and put it back together 11. So, and I actually, I'm glad. I don't think I ever really read any of it. We talked a lot about it, but I never really read any substantial pieces. So when I got to sit down with it, even though I feel like I knew a lot, I didn't know really anything. And so it made it for such an incredibly beautiful, fresh read. And I loved it, Angie. I loved it. And I loved A Miracle Creek.
Yeah.
I really loved Miracle Creek, but I love this one more even.
I think I mean I feel the same way too. So that makes me happy. And they're different.
Of course.
Like 7 POVs, and this one has one very voicey POV.
Yeah.
So I can see why if you don't like the voice, then I can see people being like, this kind of sucks, that I wish, because
well, yeah,
if you have 7 and you don't like one of the characters or one of the voices, you have an escape, you can be like, okay, all right, I'll get through that chapter just because, but I can't wait to come back to so and so or whatever. And here, if you don't like Mia, then you're
and we know this from publishing books, like not everybody likes everything, and people are not necessarily very kind when they don't like things. Right. And I think one of the things we can put into the universe here on air is that it's totally fine if you hate a book. That is absolutely a prerogative. We've all read things we did not like. You don't need to share your opinion. I think that's where you can just like keep it to yourself. So that's my personal opinion from having read too many 1 stars on my own books. But you know better. You know better than to be reading those right now. I hope you were just filtering out the 5 stars. Yeah, Angie, come on.
I do that with Miracle Creek now, but it took me a while.
Just I know.
I do feel like there's something, and I was defending myself to my marketing team too. They're like, Angie, stop it. And I was like, no, guys, I really, because like, for example, and this is interesting for us to be talking about here because of the genre question. Like a lot of people on Goodreads were like, well, I don't understand why they made it sound like it was like a mystery thriller thing, because it's kind of slow for that. On the other hand, a lot of people are like, yeah, this is a great mystery. So it's been really interesting to sort of read those and to be like, you know what, guys, I think we need to position this more as literary fiction. And so that's how like Amazon is categorizing it. That's how Book of the Month Club categorized it.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, not to say that the mystery, like suspense thriller elements aren't there. Like I love that in my own reads, and of course I wanted that here, and there were red herrings and lots of cliffhangers and all that kind of stuff that I love.
Right.
But at the same time, to sort of say, if you're the kind of person who only reads that and doesn't love complicated family dramas, doesn't like fiction, then maybe try the sample page chapter before you buy it.
Right. Right. But I mean, right. And I think that's right. I think people, we are used to, especially I think in today's day and age, we like list of thrillers, you pick one, it's all going to, they have a very similar style or vein. It's fast. It's, and this has got, like you said, it has all the parts of any mystery thriller. It just is not, that's not sort of the bulk of it. It's just a big part of it. So anyway, there's always going to be those people. And I think, we know you're going to get to the point where you're only reading the 5-star reviews. Yes. In the meantime, I hope, maybe you give those to your husband to sort out to the funny 1 stars instead of the mean 1 stars.
Yeah, the mean ones. Yeah. Or there are people who believe that people like my non-speaking students aren't really spelling on their own.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how they see that, because they're moving their own hands. Like, I don't
Right.
understand what, like, I think they think that it's, when they see it on videos and stuff, that it must be doctored. But, you know, once
Yeah.
you're like sitting in
Well,
front of,
you address that. I mean, you address the
yeah,
fact that there are people out there who are making it look like, and that's, I mean, those charlatans are so destructive to the family that is working so hard with their non-speaker. But yeah, that's not, I mean, there's always, doubters, but I understand. I mean, they've obviously not probably dealt with, or they haven't, they dealt with a non-speaker who really is a non-speaker. And there are those people too. So not everybody is going to be, be able to become somebody who can communicate, which I think is probably hard. But yeah, there's always the doubters and whatnot. But I am so proud of you.
thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
I'm so proud of you, and I loved this book, and I want to go back to the beach when I'm ready to start my new book, and we can dig back in. I got to get Christina on the hook. So
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe we should get the host to be okay with that plan.
right, we have an incredible spot in Ocean City, but neither of us owns it, so we need to talk to the third
Yeah.
writer who is
Yes,
that
exactly.
person. So
yes, absolutely.
I know you have to go, and so you have a time crunch, but I wanted everybody, seriously, I really was just such a powerful book, Angie. I loved knowing enough about it and the journey that you went through to feeling like I had a side seat to everything that was going on. And it's an incredibly beautiful book. So please, martinis every night, forget everything else, and enjoy this moment of success, right? Because the hard work is going to start again in like a nanosecond.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And everybody, oh, sorry, what?
No, I just said I'm so excited. Yeah.
Yes, it's so exciting. It's really, really exciting. So, and thank you everyone who joined us for Killer Women today with Angie Kim. I'm Danielle Girard. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.